Raymond James and Associates Inc., member of New York Stock Exchange, SIPC. Any opinions of those of Craig Decker and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Investing involves risk and you may incur a profit or loss regardless of strategy selected. There's no guarantee that these statements, opinions, or forecasts provided in the attached article will prove to be correct. Individual results may vary. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Craig Decker. Craig is the managing director and client advisor for the company Alex. Brown at Raymond James for the past 7 years. Craig works with individuals to provide multi generational private wealth management advice for families and their foundations to achieve their wealth management goals by creating comprehensive wealth management plans, both domestically and internationally, to focus on accumulating, protecting, and transferring wealth. You can find Craig on LinkedIn by searching Craig Decker, going to his website, deckerglobalwealth.com, or by phone at 410-525-6208. Hello, Craig. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Hi, Olivia. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk all things wealth management, multi generational, the whole gamut. So let's dive right into it. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Craig Decker?
Absolutely. So, success for me looks like two things, one in professional life and one in personal life. So, in a professional life, we ask clients every day, how do we measure success? When we're looking at an estate plan or a portfolio or a financial deal for their business, how do we measure success with that? And we ask it all the time. For some, it might be, if you make me 6% a year net of fees, I'm happy. For some, they want to try and beat the market. Um, we can do that. We take risks to do that. We have to talk about that. But um, in the estate plan, how do we get money to the children? How do we do what we call the 100-year wealth plan, which is getting money down to generations that don't even exist yet? Um, when we have and then in the personal life, we measure success differently, right? So in my professional life it's one thing. In my personal life, we actually had an example where we some buddies of mine and I sat around and said, how do we measure success? We were talking about boat racing, and in sailboat racing, it's something that I've done for my whole life. I've been doing finance for 30 years. I've been doing sailboat racing for over 50 years. We're great at both. And in 2007, we sat around and said, how are we going to measure success if we go out and start racing this particular sailboat? We measured success by a world championship. If we're going to do this, we better do it right. We won that world championship in May of 2007. So we measure success, and we reflect on it all the time.
I love how you pull in both personal and professional success and how they can have the same overarching theme, right? Meeting certain goals and being able to provide certain things and using those measurements as success landmarks. However, they are divided because you have that personal side versus that professional side. And sometimes it can be hard to separate both, but I think it is important, to your point, to divide both and be able to continuously evaluate them. And we're going to get into that boat racing a little bit later because I know people are probably wondering to themselves a bunch of questions, and I would be not doing my due diligence if at some point that didn't come up. But I want to dive into something you had mentioned when you were talking about your professional wealth. or professional success, and that is generational wealth. So many of us look at wealth and planning as the here now, the future for us. And a lot of times we forget about the next generation, our kids, our grandkids. I love how you mentioned the idea of the 100-year generational wealth. So, for you, why is it so important and why did you decide to focus your business on that generational wealth and having people think more about not just now, but long term?
Well, we've always been long term oriented for the whole 30-year career. It was always it was never what can we do now? What's short term? It's always been long term. Many of the families we take care of view the world the same way. So it's a great fit. Um, there was a book sometime into my career, there's a book called Family Wealth by James Hughes. And in that book, he talks about it not being about the money, it's about the values you pass down. And he actually, that's where we coined the phrase 100-year wealth plan, is from him. And when I read that book, I realized that that's all we were doing. We'd been doing that the whole time. And this is maybe 10 years into the 30-year career. And we now give that book to every client we have.
For you, when you meet a new client and they come in and they might not be thinking about generational wealth right out the gate. Sometimes people come in to offices not knowing what to
Yeah.
expect or what mindset to go into it. And sometimes you even get that probably, and I could be wrong, with clients once you've had them a little bit. So for you, how do you try to also help navigate the mindset that comes with generational wealth?
Well, one is the measurement of the performance of the money itself. The money's a tool, it still has to work and has to perform, and we measure success like we discussed. But then when we get to multi generational, we take on the view of where does that money end up at the end of your life? There's three places it can go. It can go to the federal government, it can go to the people you love, and it can go to the charities you love. And you get to pick two. It's actually difficult to give it to any one of those completely. So that helps spur on the conversation about multi generational wealth. Most people think the government has about all they need, and they don't need mine. So then that leaves us with some to them, and then most to family and charity. And that's where we begin to discuss the multi generational aspects of it. If we get most of it to the family, we need to know how to structure that to keep it from being taxed heavily, to keep it from being attacked by lawsuits and things like that, to protect it. We may get more into that here today. And so that's how we view it.
And for you, I'm a big believer that we practice what we preach to some extent, right? And you do that multifold because not only do plan generational wealth for yourself, but your business is also family oriented. And that is
Yes.
one thing that I think is so true to your values. And you mentioned values a few times and passing down that value, but paying it forward and sharing that knowledge with the next generation and making sure that that knowledge is there, the work ethic is there, everything aligned. So you actually work with your daughter. What is that like, you know, having your business, working with your family, and then when families come in, them being able to see that you're practicing what you preach on multiple different levels.
Well, Maddie does work here. So Maddie had been an intern for several years back when she was in college. She's since graduated from college and worked for the Miami Dolphins for 18 months and came back to continue what she had begun here as an intern for a few years. And so it's a lot of fun. It's nothing more pleasing to a father than to drive into work and she's parked here before I get here. I love that. Um, but everything we do is all about family, whether it's having my family participate here at the office, or helping to coach up a client's family on their responsibilities, their how the money works, how the family works, and helping to understand what those values are inside that family. One of the things we love to do is a family mission statement, and so everything here is about the family, whether it's mine or the one where that's sitting across the table. The family mission statement is what would you engrave in the door above your door at home for all to see forever about what it means to be an Atkins or a Decker. What is it? Who are we? And so that's a lot of fun and brings up a lot of interesting conversations. They have homework. They do it as a group first. Then everyone breaks off and does their own version of it, and then they come back together and collaborate on it. And it goes in very different directions typically than what they think they have once they start to work through it.
And I love that idea of the family mission statement because you are right. It plays core into who we are, how we look at things, how we approach situations. And when we bring that mindset into our environment, when we talk about what our goals are long term, generational, what we hope we can provide not just to our families now, but those lessons that we can pass on. I think thinking about that mission statement is such a good idea and approach. And I love that. And I will start to be thinking about that myself now because it is true. A lot of times in business and as entrepreneurs, and you can probably relate to this yourself, when you're building a business, you need to create your business mission statement. When you're creating that brand on how you want people to see you in the business world, you have to create that brand, that mission of what you want to bring to the table. But so many times we forget to do that in our personal lives. So I love how you make that an effort, an exercise, and even homework. I love when people, I'm not saying it, my teacher side's coming out a little bit, I guess, but I love when people give homework because it really, especially in this environment, adds value to what they could be getting and really makes things transparent along the way as well. Correct?
It's very transparent and everyone has skin in the game. So we're all working on the same thing. An example would be when a client's child wants to start managing their own account, wants to start learning about stocks and bonds and funds and so on. I don't just tell them what they should be doing. I make them dig for it, and I make them understand what it's like to research those stocks, to come up with ideas, to look around their house and see what are they using. Are you an Apple house or a Microsoft house? Things like that. And so homework is key, and everybody gets homework. I have homework. Studying for this, so is homework.
Yeah, right? We all gotta do our homework sometimes. You don't just grow out of that because you graduate from school or college. Homework never goes away. We take work home with us. That is really homework sometimes.
It really gets back to in personal life as an athlete growing up.
Mhm.
I actually grew up in the NBA and the NFL. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon for the then Baltimore Colts and the Baltimore Bullets. And, you know, my kids now, we're all D1 athletes or are currently. And I was a D1 athlete. Everybody's doing their share, and it's all about coaching, getting better. Let's get 1% better every day. To do that, whether it's working out is effectively homework also, and perfecting your whatever it is you're trying to perfect, whether it's work or sport or family.
And let's dive into more of that sports background a little bit now. So you brought up sailing earlier and how all of your family, your father passed down that sports mindset probably from working in professional athletics. You have had, I won't even say had because you still do it and it still is a passion with sports, and your kids, like you mentioned, are all athletes. For you personally, when it comes to sailing, How did you choose that as your sport? Because it is something that is more of a rare sport that we don't see every day. And how has that shaped your mindset and approach to things?
Uh, I'd have to thank my dad for that. Unfortunately, he's not here with us to thank him again for it. But Dad instilled that sport. He was a football player at Illinois when he went to college. He So that's the first generation of D1 athlete. I was a sailor in college. The kids all have their sports of swimming and rowing spread among the three daughters. But I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So for you, like
Oh,
how did
how?
you
So I
how
live in Annapolis. Annapolis is the sailing capital of the world. So dad was always a sailor. He grew up sailing on lakes out in Iowa and Illinois, and brought that to the family. And that was just a family event from day one. We have pictures of me on sailboats when I was 3, 4 years old, wearing big life jackets to keep safe. So that's how we got into sailing. We live in Annapolis. It's sailing capital of the world, like I said. And it was in every aspect of my life. It's what can we do to be better? And what can we do to help our community better? What can we do to help our clients better? What can we do to be help each other in the family better? And then how can we be better at sailing? And it's always that same mantra I said, 1% better every day for everything.
and I think it's so interesting too, because as a swimmer myself and someone who loves the water, I love that your family is water oriented in their sports. Um, but I could only imagine that there's some approach of unpredictability in sailing and preparing for that. You have to be prepared when small things might come up, or you have to potentially turn the wheel a different way than normal because of things. So for you, how has training for unpredictability, but being that little better and preparing yourself, how does that intertwine to your work life and what you're doing with your organization?
Well, in all aspects, we're navigating. We'll use that word. We're navigating through good times and bad times. So there's navigating through stock market. There's navigating through an estate plan. We're navigating now through the death of a client. There's a lot going on, and we have to navigate through that. The world gives us issues to navigate through all the time. We have plenty of world events right now that affect the stock market. We
Mhm.
have plenty of tax law and legislative events that we have to navigate through to help families with their estate plan. We have businesses the clients that have businesses with us, which are majority. They have different aspects of their business we have to navigate through in order to raise money for them or sell the company. So it transcends everything, including family. So we're very blessed and have not had any family issues, but not everyone's that lucky. So how do we navigate through that issue for that family to come out on the other side as well as we can?
And I love how you said you use the word navigating because it is all about navigation and figuring out where you are today and handling some and navigating, I should say, some of those twists and turns. And for you, one thing you really try to also work with individuals on, and you just mentioned this, is the family businesses, selling businesses at times. So for you, when someone comes to you about, okay, we might want to sell this, is this a good opportunity? How do you work with individuals on figuring out if selling is right for them and their family, both short term and long term? What are some of the things you try to think about and have them think about?
Those conversations always start with two questions. Do you have all the capital you need to grow the company the way you want to? Most would say, no, if I had more money, I'd be able to do this or do that, or buy this or buy that, or hire people. So that's the first question. The second question is, do you plan a full or partial exit from the business in the next 2 to 3 years? And that's the one that gets everybody thinking, well, I hadn't thought of that, but that's probably something we should start working on. Or I've been thinking about that for years and never knew who to talk to about it. Um, Sometimes these families just are passing on the business to the next generation, and we get into this multi-generational wealth planning. But sometimes they're going to sell it, and we bring in investment bankers and advisors. It's a CPA question also, and there's a lot of legality to it. So we have to really put a whole team together to investigate how to sell a company for a family. Raymond James has a fantastic investment banking group down in our St. Petersburg, Florida headquarters. We also use investment banking affiliates throughout the country based on specialties. So there's quite a bit that can go on there.
One other question I want to bring up to you on this topic of selling a business, also on the aspect a little bit of navigating when certain things come up. So I'm going to give an example, and I kind of just, you don't have to answer it in detail because there's not enough information. I'm just using it as an example. But if you had a client come to you and all of a sudden they had this thriving business, it was going to go down to children, and it was 2 generations working in it, and then life happens, right? Something a big move might happen, and now they're like, "Okay, do we wanna continue the business? Do we wanna sell? Do we wanna close the business? Is there enough to really sell?" The next generation's working, but they also have that full time. A lot of people think when they think of Mul multi generations working together, that it's always a full-time job, and that might not be the case, and it might not be what they wanna be doing or owning that business. How do you have that conversation of, "Okay, yes, we understand multi-generations are working together, but where everything lays now, it's best to sell or to close the doors because it isn't what necessarily the dream, the passion that that second or third generation wants to be doing."
This happens all the time. And it's that third generation you're alluding to that usually turns and navigates a different way.
Mm.
They didn't grow up in the business, they didn't build the business. In their eyes, their parents weren't at home or at their soccer game because of the business. And so they become dispassionate to the business. And they grew up with extra wealth that they didn't have to worry about these things. And so it's that third generation typically that moves the needle. And it becomes, if that's not the case, and it is just the best time to sell the business, that family still gets to work together on their foundation or their charity events and things like that. So what we need to figure out is how everyone can have purpose in the family moving forward, and whether that's with or without the company, or with or without the next company. We help them navigate all that.
And I think one thing that really pointed out to me, and I think is so important to keep in mind, is the purpose you have within the family. And you mentioned that, and I love that. It's, what does that look like? If it looked like all business oriented before and most of your conversations, how does those relationships change, alter? What is the drive as you as an individual and all the pieces coming together to make that unit? For you too, what is the conversation like when people might not know what that purpose looks like? How do you try to help them navigate what, and you kind of touched upon this, what the next move might be like and how that transition can really be and how it can feel, because sometimes the unknown can be very daunting.
It can be. It's important that we all have a purpose, that we all feel that purpose. And in some families, we'll pick a family, no names, but the children are all involved in the business. It is the third generation, but now the next generation is coming in and they'd rather do something different. So, what if the history major ran the charity instead and continued to help the family, had a purpose, representing the family? Is that a viable option for that child? And do they have the talent set to run the foundation or the charity? And so that we help families with that. And some children just aren't built for it, and that's okay. And the parents have to recognize it's okay that your child's not involved, and that they're not gonna be involved, and there's no role for them because they've picked something different. If a child wants to be a police officer, that's fantastic. There might not be a role for that in the business or in the foundation, so go let them do what they want to do.
Mm.
We do get into conversations then about what is fair. So if one child has a big chunk of the company and one child doesn't, what does that mean 5, 10, 15 years from now as that wealth diverges? And are we okay with that? So we walk through that scenario with families. We bring in our decades of experience with big wealthy families and not so wealthy families about how they've dealt with those sort of things. And then sometimes I bring in my own family as examples of things, um, to work through that as well, navigate.
And I think that's so important to think about too, because and that wasn't even something I was thinking about as you were going through the answer until you got there of it isn't just about, okay, if you don't have equal cuts of a business today, it's are you going to be okay and how will that look like that 5, 10, 20 years down the line? Is is that gonna cause a rift? Because a lot of times, whether we all like to admit it or not, if you don't plan, if you don't think ahead, money sadly can get in the way, especially when you talk about more and more money of family relationships. And that's ultimately not what people want. That's not the end goal at all. So I think it is important and really highlights what you were saying of thinking about, okay, will you be okay with it looking like this 10, 20 years from now and that cut? If not, how can we navigate that as well? For you, in doing this for so many years, what has been the most rewarding part of working with individuals, navigating your business, helping your daughter navigate her footing in the industry as well?
The most rewarding thing for me probably is just the continuation of the family environment throughout my professional day. So everybody here on the team, it's all family first. If someone needs to leave and go to a soccer game, have at it, because I'm going to do the same thing, and I don't ask anybody to do something I wouldn't do. Um, so the family, and I alluded to this morning, came around the corner. My daughter's already parked here. That's fantastic. Um, and generating, creating that environment where it's all about respect and family and honor and trustworthiness. And we're all a big family here too. So
And
that's
I love
probably my
that.
most rewarding part.
And I love that too, and how that is your most rewarding part because it goes back to your statement earlier of what are the values and what are the values you want to pass down. That being said, as well, what are some things that you hope to pass down value wise to your next generation?
Well, we have a family mission statement, and it alludes some of those things. But I think that I would measure success, to bring it back to the beginning. I would measure success by whether my children continue to be positive role models, positive producers of quality work in whatever field they're in, and help to make the world a better place.
I love that because pa paying it forward, making that world a better place is so important and goes right back into the aspect of generational wealth, generational values, everything you and your business stand for. One question I have for you as well is for our audience who might have not thought about the importance of generational wealth prior to this conversation and now they're hooked in wanting to learn more, what is something you would challenge them to think about or maybe change their thinking when it comes to planning for future generations and planning in general? Because sometimes, let's be honest, life happens and we're like, "Okay, well, we'll plan down the road. I'm young. I don't need to be doing that now." Or, "Oh, we'll do that next month." And the next month happens and it's okay, we'll push it. What are some things you would like to challenge people on how to think about the planning, generational planning, and all of that?
So my challenge, my homework, I guess, to everyone to keep that theme would be that they review their plan. If they
Mhm.
don't have a plan, their plan should continue to be updated, and include what's this look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? How much is the government getting based on the estate plan I have now? How much are my charities getting? What if I died tomorrow? It happens. Someone will see this and not make the next day. So it happens, and we have to accept that. But how does it all look? How does it all feel if you go today? Do your children have the background on the family values and the money and the estate plan and the business? Do they have that sorted out before you go? And the longer you wait to fix that or to navigate that, the less chance you have of success. And that's not how we measure success. We don't measure it by, did we uh, not have everything done? Were we not prepared for the inevitable? We don't get to take it with us. The only thing we can leave behind are the values. And so, how's that?
That's good, and I love it, and to play on that a little bit, I wanna take it one step further.
Okay.
For those individuals who might be younger, might not have that family yet, and are going, "Oh, I don't need to think about this because I don't have a family yet. I don't have kids yet." What do you think is an appropriate age, or is someone ever too young to start thinking about wealth management and generational wealth?
No one's ever too young. And I'll answer that in two ways. One thing we do help a lot with are pro athletes. Pro athletes make a bunch of money these days and don't have families yet. They have a lot of wolves knocking at the door. They have a lot of opportunity to mismanage that for the long term. So to get a pro athlete to focus on something that's beyond the season is monumental. And if they can take a few minutes, take a few days, take a few months to do their homework and learn about planning and the longer term, they can change the path of their family's wealth for generations. Um, and so that's we do quite a bit of that. In fact, when Madison was an intern here, Maddie was an intern. She started that group here and continues to work heavily on that space now with her background and all the athlete and former pro athletes that we know. So so helping them with that, and then the other is as far as the super young. I think my children have all known everything from as soon as they could understand what privacy was. So you have to have a privacy conversation. But my children have seen our tax returns. They see what the dinner bill is. They know the income statement. They know the balance sheet. They know all that. Again, it has to be prefaced by privacy and the ability to keep those things secret. Um, so that's how I kind of view that. If you can have a conversation with a child about confidentiality, you begin to ease into them understanding how that all works. And the biggest mistake I think families can make is keeping that secret until well, and I know children that are 25 years old that don't have any idea what the truth is, and I don't think that's the way to do it. I think it's better to have clarity and understanding, again, all with privacy, but it's better to know than to not know.
And I love that. And you started to answer what my next question was going to be. I was going to wrap this show up, but you keep giving me tidbits that I can't leave on the table. Um, and one of those things was the fact that you had that conversation with your kids. They are seeing the information, they know what's going on. Do you find that when parents dive in with their kids, share the transparency of like, this is what's going on with financials, this is also what it looks like, this is what it means, right? Use the example of the dinner bill. Do you think that helps long term with individuals understanding of money, how things really cost, how everything plays a role into each other? Have you seen that significant difference in really having those conversations younger and showing them what it doesn't just mean to work hard, but how that unfolds financially?
I think it's paramount that families do that. I think it's extraordinarily important that everyone around you knows what's going on. When you're on a sailboat, everyone has to know what's going on. When you're in the business, has to know what's going on. Again, there's privacy issue. There's no such thing as privacy on a sailboat, but uh, in the company, there has to be privacy and confidentiality. In the family, privacy and confidentiality. But it's like any other team. You have to know what's going on, and I have seen where that has helped many families with their children understanding what that meant. And I've seen where families insisted on not doing it and it not work out.
Well, I love all those tidbits because I also think it's true. Working in professional sports myself, I've seen sometimes where the child could also end up becoming the breadwinner multiple folds over and helping to provide not just for parents, siblings, who knows, and they haven't had that experience with the money yet. And now you're adding a whole lot more layers to the equation too, especially at that level of pro athlete and that young age of money of okay, now there's also agents involved. How many fees? How does this play out over years? Making sure, you understand how all those bills actually come together, not just the short term, right? You get that check, you want to spend it on the new car. I remember so many times the number one thing we would tell athletes when I worked at the Giants is I would have a discussion with them. I'm like, I know you just signed. I know you want that brand new, very expensive car, but you're only gonna be driving it here. No one's gonna see it. So, is it really worth the money or is it worth investing it for your future? Because as
Well,
we all know, especially in sports, it it's not gonna be a career that you 9 times out of 10, we have the Kelsey brothers, we have Tom Brady, the Mannings, their careers is most of their life, and they're the lucky ones, but for most, that's not how it plays out.
I'm okay when if it's a great contract, I'm okay with them buying a great car,
Mhm.
but just buy one and don't buy a big mansion in the country yet. Let's rent downtown by the stadium and keep it simple.
Mhm.
But recognize that it's the cash accumulating in the accounts that that is for the future. And just like a business owner who sells their company when they're 65, they make a ton of money in a short period of time, cash, liquidity. The pro athlete these days makes all their money when they're in their 20s and 30s if they're lucky, and it has to last longer than the
Mhm.
business owner. So there's a lot of parallels there.
Greg, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
They can call me at 410-525-6208. They can email me at craig.decker@alexbrown.com, or they can visit our website and learn more about all this. There's videos there. There's a lot of what we've talked about is already represented on the website at deckerglobalwealth.com.
Well, thank you, Craig, for all of your insight today.
Thank you for your time. This is a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me.
I love this conversation, and I think it's such an important one to have. And I have many insights and takeaways from today's conversation, but I'm only going to list a few. And a few of those key takeaways from today's conversation is it's not always about the money, but the values you pass down. That was such a theme in what Craig was saying throughout this whole show. And I think it is so important. And it plays into our next takeaway of your money can go one of three ways when you pass it down or when you pass away, to the government, to your loved ones, or to the charities that you want to give back to. You have to start thinking about how you want to sector that money. Where do you want most of that money to go, and planning for it? And how do you want to pass down the values, the money, all of it? And like Craig had mentioned earlier, it isn't it's never too early to start planning, to start thinking about that. And that all ends up playing a role in how you think and how you approach generational wealth, as well as what is your family mission statement? I love this homework assignment. It's probably one of my favorite homework assignments I've heard on the show. Actually, the only assignment that a guest has actually give, but I am all for it. Of what is your family mission statement? Sit down, think about that mission statement. How does it play a role in what you're currently doing? Does what you're currently doing also need to change then based on what your mission is? As well as what is your purpose within your family? So many times we don't think about that. And that was one of my favorite things that Craig had mentioned is finding your purpose within your family. Because so many times in today's world, we think about what is your purpose that drives you every day to wake up. What is your purpose and drive within work environment? Was your purpose within the community? But we forget to ask the question, what is your purpose within the family? And what was that dynamic like? As well as start thinking about your family plan. What is that family plan and how is it changing? How is it adapting? And what are your goals for it? And that is the challenge I leave you with today, as well as start thinking about that plan because, like Craig said, it's not just about once you get that family. It's if you are that athlete, start thinking about it today. How do you want that money to last? If you are that business owner, as the business grows, how do you want to allocate that money and pass it down? This was a great episode with our top notch guest, Craig Decker. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.